Okay, welcome to Applied Linear Algebra course. In today's class, we are going to talk about the applications of the theory and all the concepts that we discussed so far. So quickly, let me start the lesson by asking this simple question. What did we study uh, in last few lessons? So in last few lessons, we specifically looked at uh, applied numerical linear algebra. And this is a very interesting field wherein what we do is we try to solve the practical problems which are usually large scale by some sort of computer algorithms and software. So we looked at different ways to solve problems, like the classic thing that we talked about, which is probably one of the most important, is we talked about something called as the QR decomposition, wherein you have a matrix and you want to convert that matrix into an orthonormal basis multiplied by a row matrix. Now, the key idea here is this is orthonormal. Which means all the columns are essentially perpendicular to each other. And that gives us a very good basis. And this goes back to the initial discussion that we talked about. So consider that if you have a vector and if you have a coordinate system x and y, if you have a vector, it's very easy or more intuitive or more meaningful to resolve this vector along x and y. And the reason we have the resolution around x and y, because something like this. If you have a point on y, if you have a point on y-axis, no matter how much of x you add or scale, you cannot represent the point on the y-axis. And I will repeat this once again. What this means is if you have a point on y-axis, no matter what you do with just unit vector along x, you cannot represent the point on the y-axis. Same thing happens when you have a point on the x-axis. So no matter if you just try to represent this point using a unit vector along y direction, you will not be able to become successful. You cannot do it. In other words, to map this space, you need a reference frame wherein these two bases, I and j, are perpendicular to each other. So this is the fundamental concept that we talked about. And believe it or not, same thing occurs in the case of SVD. So if you have a square matrix, you can do the eigen decomposition. If you have a rectangular matrix, what you have is U sigma V transpose. Again, the idea is you have this basis matrix, which is orthonormal. Now, we talked about the practical implementation of QR algorithm. We also talked about Lankos. We also talked about the Krylov subspaces. We also talked about the Arnoldi iteration and so on. So essentially, we touch upon section 2 of the textbook. And to be honest with you, what I did is I covered most of the theory part. And I understand that it was monotonous and borderline boring. But now in today's class, what we are going to do is we are going to use those techniques, what we studied, and we are going to apply those to some very, very practical problems. And I promise you at the end of today's lesson, you're gonna have few aha moments. So first thing which I want to talk about is, this is what I talked about in last class. Say if you have a vector A, say if your vector A is something like, let me consider A as a row vector, or I can use it as a column vector. So say 1, 2, 3. I have a vector which is something like 1, 2, 3, and I have another vector which is 4, 5, 6. I have another vector which is 4, 5, 6. So far, we have talked about something called as inner product and outer product. So let me define what do I mean by inner product. So what do I mean by inner product? So inner product is A transpose B, wherein what I have is 1, 2, 3 multiplied by 4, 5, 6. And if I expand this inner product, please note this is going to become 4 times 1 plus 2 times 5 plus 3 times 6. And you're going to get just one number. So it will be 4 plus 10, 14 plus 18. So 32. So you get a single number. Inner product is nothing but a dot product. Why this is called as a dot product? Because please note, A is a vector, B is a vector. So which means if I look at the three-dimensional space, I can physically draw this vector A. I can physically draw this vector B. And when I take this inner product, essentially what I'm doing is I'm finding the projection of vector A onto vector B. Everyone understood this? That is what is the meaning of the inner product. Now this is the inner product for vectors. Now if I want to, actually let me understand what is going on. When I talk about the inner product, these numbers get multiplied and both of these get added. Now what I want to do is I want to define inner product of a function. So what do I mean by that? So think about that this A, rather than being discrete, is continuous. So I'm gonna have A of t. So something like this. And this A is 1, 2, 3. So this vector represents this continuous function. And then similarly, I have this B of t, and then I have say 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. So what I want to do now is I want to define the inner product. I want to define the inner product of these two functions. So if this is B of t, is 4, 5, 4, 5, 6. I don't know why Zoom is quitting. Give me a minute here. Let me log back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Now this is. Can you hear me? Oh, we get echo. You should be able to hear me and you should be able to see the screen. Yeah, I need to talk to our IT folks to see what's going on with the Wi-Fi here. I think there is issue with Wi-Fi or Zoom servers. Anyway, so this allows us to calculate the value of the function square, and then I can actually find out this actually becomes the L2 norm of the function. So f of t becomes an L2 norm of the function. Now, why this is important? This is important because let's look at what we wrote earlier. A is equal to QR, where Q is an orthonormal basis, normal basis, and R is the matrix, or in other words, it's the scaling matrix. So to represent a matrix, it's easier to decompose a matrix when we have an orthonormal basis multiplied by some weights. Now, all the data that we are going to look at, whether it's an image, whether it's an audio signal, whether it's just the signal coming from sensors, if we want to understand the sensor behavior, if I want to understand the audio synthesis, or if I want to understand the image, it's always a good idea to decompose that data into a basis which is orthonormal basis. And this is nothing but, and I want you to understand this very, very carefully. This matrix A is a product of two things. You have an orthonormal basis multiplied by the weights on that basis. In other words, what component of X, what component of Y, what component of Z is consistent. When you add those together, you get an A. If you extend this concept to continuous functions, you basically get something called as the Fourier series. So what is a Fourier series? And most of you might have studied Fourier series in the past. So what is a Fourier series? Believe it or not, SVD or a QR decomposition for a matrix, SVD or a QR decomposition for a matrix is exactly similar to the Fourier decomposition or the Fourier series. When you take that Fourier series, when you take the limit of Fourier series and you extend that limit to minus infinity to plus infinity, and you take the limit, the domain goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, and you take the limit, what you get is a Fourier transform. So most of you are familiar with what a Fourier series is, but let me just give you a pictorial representation, and then we will go to the MATLAB code and implement that implementation. So imagine that you have a periodic signal. Now this periodic signal can be decomposed into cosine components and sine components of varying frequencies. So you would have cosine, say omega 1t, say plus cosine of 2 omega 1t, cosine of 3 omega 1t. Same thing, you will have sine omega 1t, sine 2 omega 1t plus sine 3 omega 1t. And these sines and cosine functions, please understand, these sines and cosine functions are perpendicular to each other. So in other words, you have a basis, you have a cosine basis and you have a sine basis, and you are trying to find out the weights or the coefficients multiplying this A1, A2, A3, and say B1, B2, B3. So once you add these together, you get this periodic signal, which is exactly similar as you have a matrix and you are decomposing that into an orthonormal basis multiplied by some weights. Only thing is these weights are stacked or represented in the form of a matrix. So what I want to do is, with that information, I want to switch to the MATLAB screen. So I'm going to switch to MATLAB, and then I'm going to walk you through each and every code. And then I would switch back and forth between MATLAB and the screen. So let me share my MATLAB screen. Everyone, please open MATLAB. Okay, now you should be able to see me and you should be able to see the MATLAB window. Online students, can you see me and can you see the MATLAB window? Okay, now what I want to do is, let's look at the first code. The first code is nothing but the inner product. So what is happening here? I have a vector f. I have a vector f. I have another vector g. And what I'm going to do is, basically, I'm actually think about f as the discrete set of points. Think about g as the discrete set of points. So first, I'm going to plot those discrete set of points and perform some sort of interpolation. And the purpose of that interpolation is I would get a smooth curve from those discrete points. So I'm going to find out the interpolation. So ff and gf is the interpolation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot those. So I'm going to plot those. That way you will see the discrete representation and the continuous representation that will be plotted onto this plot. Please note that this code is actually arranged in sections. So if you want to run the code, just you highlight the section and say run section. So just highlight the section and just go and hit run section. So when you run section, what would happen is the code would run and that would give you a plot. Everyone got the plot? So as you can see that what I have here is I have these discrete points and I have created some sort of a continuous function or a sort of interpolation that goes through all those discrete set of points. Online students, did you get that plot? So in the next part, what I want to do is I want to find the inner product. So what I want to do is in the next part, I want to find the inner product. So in inner product, what's going to happen is actually I can multiply those two in the matrix form, or what I can do is I can actually find out the how much of cosine component and how much of sine component is inside that, and then actually perform the decomposition. So in the next part, what I'm going to do is the first I'm going to get x, then I'm going to get the length, and then I'm going to go ahead and then find out the sine component. Essentially, I would do the Fourier sort of decomposition, and then I'm going to plot the whole plot. So if you run the next section, so you will see that this is nothing but the inner product. And what is going on in here? This inner product is computed in two ways. This inner product is computed as the product of those two numbers of what you see, and this inner product is computed by considering the Fourier decomposition. And basically what the plot that you see is, if you have those two continuous functions, so if you have these two continuous functions, if you want to find out the inner product of these continuous functions, that is going to be the inner product of the continuous function. So if you are given a discrete set of data and then you construct a function that is representing using the interpolation function, and now if you want to find out the inner product of these two, that is going to look like an inner product of these two continuous functions. So figure number 2 gives you the inner product of continuous functions. Now what I want to do is I want to extend what I just talked about. Fourier basis is two orthogonal functions, a cosine function and sine function, and we are going to decompose a continuous signal into sines and cosines. So the next example is, I have a Mexican hat function, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Fourier decomposition, and then I'm going to find out how the sine components that are embedded in that Mexican hat function, cosine components that are embedded in that Mexican hat function. And then if you go down, if you look at the code, this code goes something like this. There are multiple ways you can run this code. You can actually run the whole code in one shot, or you can actually run the code in sections. So first, let me provide you with a step size. Then let's define this hat function. So evaluate this hat function. Now, what I want to talk to you about, please note that this hat function is not repeating. So what this is basically it's defined in the domain -3 to +3. So if you go down, the next part, I'm trying to find out the Fourier series. And Fourier series, if you remember, do you recollect the equation to find Fourier coefficient? If you don't recollect, let me tell you what is going on. Here is what we are going to do. Let me tie this to the QR algorithm that we talked about in last class. You are given a matrix. Okay, you are given a matrix. What was the first step in QR decomposition? You first found a normalized basis vector. Do you agree with me? You first found out the normalized basis vector. Then what did you do? Then you took the inner product. You took the inner product or the dot product with of the signal or the data set, and then subtracted that as a projection from what you had and found out the another vector, and then you renormalized it. So the idea here, the key observation here is you took an inner product. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing. Rather than taking an inner product of one vector with another vector, since this is a continuous function, I'm going to take the inner product of this function with this basis and then normalize it. And that gives you a very well-known equation. So think about it like this. You have -pi to plus pi, and I have this function. I'm going to call this function f of x. I'm going to take an inner product with the basis cosine say omega x dx, and then I'm going to normalize that with the constant that I have over here. So this is how the Fourier series decomposition looks like. Basically, this is omega, we call this k, and then this becomes ak. So what I did, I took the function, I took the inner product of that function with the cosine function or cosine basis, and then I normalized. So what I did in the discrete case in last class, I'm doing the exact same thing with the continuous function in the case of Fourier series. So once again, I repeat, Fourier series is nothing but the extension of QR decomposition or SVD for a continuous function. You can think about the matrices and vectors as the discrete data, but if you convert the discrete data into continuous data, and if you start taking inner products, you are basically going in the direction of Fourier series. So if you compute the Fourier series, the second part, I'm going to run this. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to plot this. So I'm going to run this section. And then you will notice, I want you to observe figure number 1. So everyone run figure number 1, watch figure number 1. You will observe in figure number 1, you initially have that Mexican hat function. And now what you did, you found out the Fourier series, you found out the Fourier decomposition, and you see that this Mexican hat can be reconstructed by combining these different sines and cosine functions. It is exactly same as you have an orthonormal basis multiplied by some weights or scaling, and those weights are nothing but a1, a2, a3 and b1, b2, b3 in the case of Fourier series. And if you look at figure number 2, what you would notice is you will notice the frequencies and you will see their respective magnitudes. So I have actually plotted the Fourier series and the coefficients of Fourier series in figure number 2, and I have plotted the decomposition of the Mexican hat function in figure number 1. So this is the Fourier decomposition, which is exactly same as the QR decomposition and the SVD that we talked about in last class. So any questions about the Fourier decomposition? So the key point here is, why are we studying Fourier decomposition? Because Fourier decomposition and its representation is intimately related to signal processing, image processing, image compression, denoising, and so on and so forth. The key idea is this: just like QR decomposition, Fourier decomposition actually takes the data and chops it or fragments it into the orthonormal basis. So that exactly what is happening in the Fourier decomposition. Next, as a next example, what I want to do is, I want to actually run a Fourier decomposition for just a hat function. So please look at this Fourier hat function. So run section. And after you run this, you will see figure 1 and figure 2. And in figure 1, you notice that it's sort of a triangular shape. It's a hat. And if you were to look at the Fourier decomposition of that hat, you have this bunch of sines and cosines that are independently plotted. When you combine those together, and this is a zoomed view, so you can actually zoom in or zoom out. And if you zoom out, so you can actually see, you will see the total representation. And if you zoom in, you will see a bunch of sines and cosines that are embedded that is representing this Mexican hat function. So this black is the actual hat function. So let me make it bigger. The black is the actual hat function, and the red is the Fourier approximation of that Mexican hat. So if you decompose, if you have the sines and cosines, you combine those together, then you don't get the perfect notch or the node at the top or tip at the top, but you see a decent approximation of the Fourier hat. And this is the code wherein what if you look at yes, that is correct. That Fourier decomposition is decompose function into cosine and sine basis, which are nothing but orthonormal, and the weights are nothing but the R matrix. So basically, the QR decomposition that we studied in last class for discrete data set is extended to the Fourier decomposition in the continuous. But most of you have studied Fourier series sometime in your undergraduate studies. The basic problem with Fourier series is this. That is called the Gibbs phenomenon. Remember Fourier series Gibbs phenomenon? No? Have you studied Fourier series by any chance? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to take a step back. And the reason I'm going to take a step back, because I want to actually construct the discrete Fourier transform matrix and actually show you where linear algebra intersects with the Fourier decomposition and calculus. So I want to ask you a few fundamental questions, and please be honest. Can someone tell me what is Fourier series based on what we have studied so far? Yes. So, okay, so I'm going to give you a very basic definition of what Fourier series is. Basically, Fourier series was not invented by Fourier, by the way. Fourier series and Fourier transform was invented by Gus about 100 years ago before Fourier. But here is what Fourier said. If you have a continuous function, continuous means no discontinuities, going from minus infinity to plus infinity or going on the domain. That continuous periodic function can be represented as sum of sines plus sum of cosines. And why did we use sines and cosines? For a simple reason, they are perpendicular to each other. Everyone understood this? So this is exactly same as you have a vector and you are resolving around x-axis and resolving around y-axis. Everyone understood this? That's exactly what Fourier series does. Yes. So just really quick, cancel each other and the value also yes. So the values of the weights could be positive or negative, which is exactly resolving a vector on x-axis and y-axis. Think about you have a sine axis and you have a cosine axis. The only thing is the frequencies are multiple. So think about it like you have one axis frame, second axis frame, third axis frame, and you are taking that continuous wave and chopping it into two perpendicular coordinates. Everyone understood this? Fourier series fundamentally is used for periodic functions. Periodic functions means the functions that are repeating. Do you agree with me? That is where the Fourier series actually shines. But what is the problem with Fourier series? The fundamental problem with, and I just want to make sure that these fundamental concepts are super clear, because after this, I'm going to show you something called as discrete Fourier transform, which is actually a matrix. Then we'll talk about fast Fourier transform, and then we will talk about the Fourier decomposition of images. But before I do that, let me give you the next thing. So we know what the Fourier series is. What is the problem with Fourier series? Fourier series sucks as soon as you have a discontinuity or you have a sharp turn. When you have something smooth, something continuous, something periodic, Fourier series is great. But as soon as you have discontinuities or you have sudden changes or you have sort of edges, the Fourier series oscillates. It cannot represent it properly. And that is called as the Gibbs phenomenon. So the second next script creates actually a movie on the Gibbs phenomenon. So run this. Oh, I made a mistake. So with debugging. So I'm going to run this section. So please run the next section after Mexican hat, which is the Gibbs phenomenon. And you will see where the Fourier series does not do well. So I want you to highlight the Gibbs and run that section. And now you will see what happens with the Fourier series. So what I have is I have a rectangular wave. So, or if I have a square wave. So there are two figures. So this is a rectangular wave. And this is very commonly observed everywhere. So for an example, step function, or if you were to look at the images, edges, you are going to see some sort of sudden change. And those oscillations, you see the red thing is the Fourier reconstruction of that square wave or that rectangular wave. So what is happening? And once you run this code in your figure 2, you would see this movie wherein you will see the reconstruction. So all these Fourier series, they keep on getting added, but still they are not able to cancel out the oscillation when there is sudden change. Everyone understood this? Yes.
So the issue is on the first figure, it shows that the DC is on the edges of just disconnected values. So it's just like
it's always gonna have, you're always gonna have noise, or you're always gonna have variability, or you're always gonna have some sort of oscillations when there is sudden change. That is the problem with Fourier series. Everyone understood this? These oscillations. And sometimes you can live with these oscillations, but many a times you don't want these oscillations. Online students, any questions? Now, why this so much hoopla about Fourier series? What does Fourier series do? So think about the compression concept that we talked about. You have an image of the dog, you did the SVD, and then you actually reduced the size of data and finally did the reconstruction. You can use Fourier series for similar application. So the only problem is the Fourier series by definition is for periodic functions. What if I want to use for a function that is not periodic? Then that is where the Fourier transform comes in the picture. So what is Fourier transform? Fourier transform integral is nothing but the limit, and this is very important. And to be honest with you, I understood this very late in my life, but I want you to understand this when you're starting your graduate education. So what is the relationship between Fourier series and Fourier transform? Fourier transform is nothing but the Fourier series. Basically, it's the limit of the Fourier series wherein your length of the domain goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, and you take the limit. So that means essentially you can represent any signal with something called as the Fourier transform. Now, Fourier transform allows you to take a signal and chop it, slice it, and represent it in some sort of
orthonormal basis. And now the next question you will ask me, why again orthonormal basis? And I will show you in just a second where is this orthonormal basis going to help us. So if you have in signal processing, in audio communication, in vision analysis, in almost all the applications, you are going to deal with discrete data. You will never deal with continuous data. You will study sample data. So what we do is we use something called as discrete Fourier transform, DFT. DFT is the discrete version of the Fourier transform, and Fourier transform is nothing but the limit of the Fourier series when your domain is extended to from minus infinity to plus infinity. Everyone understood this? That is the only thing that you need to remember. Now, discrete Fourier transform on its own is a very, very complicated matter, which means mathematically, if you think about the discrete Fourier transform, mathematical operation is just construction of a matrix and recursive multiplication of that matrix. So next part of the code actually shows how the discrete Fourier transform is calculated. And I just want to run this and I just want to show you that discrete Fourier transform coefficients can be represented pictorially. They will give you a very nice picture. So if you run, let me see something in the chat window. Yes, I'm not just talking about the whiteboard. I'm talking about the MATLAB script. So Fourier transform is the Fourier transform is related to Fourier series. Like if you were to take the limit of the Fourier series, and if you extend the domain from minus infinity to plus infinity, what integral you have, the integral that you get is nothing but the Fourier transform. That is how the Fourier transform is related. And that actually it's so important that I highlighted this in the MATLAB script. So the next part, if you run the section, what you will do is, this is actually if you calculate the discrete Fourier transform coefficients. Remember the coefficients that we talked about. If you find out the DFT coefficients and plot those DFT coefficients, you are going to get a very nice pictorial representation. So these are those discrete Fourier transform coefficients. There are two ways to plot this. There is a slow technique and there is a fast technique. So you are welcome to do tick-tock inside MATLAB, and you will see that the fast technique gives you the results quicker compared to the slow technique. Okay. Everyone understood? Now, why are we studying this? And the next example will make it super clear. So, okay. How many of you are in the robotics class? Okay. Remember when Professor Turaga showed that noisy signal? What I thought, we should run a Fourier filter on. That will take care of the warping function. I'll tell you what. So here is what we are doing. We are going to use FFT to denoise the signal. Remember the signals he showed, they were noisy. And what he did, he constructed a warping function and then try to clean up the signal and get the features. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is, on line 289, I have a function that is periodic. Then on line number 290, I have some sort of random noise, and it's actually random. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to combine that random noise with the basic clean signal. So I have a clean baseline clean signal. I added that random noise to it, and now I have a noisy signal. And you will see that this makes that signal super noisy. Then here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that noisy signal, find the Fourier transform, And what will happen is, as soon as I find the Fourier transform, I would know what is the frequency content in that signal and what is the relative amplitude of that frequency content. And what I would do is, I would actually add a threshold. So I would say that if the magnitude is beyond certain limit, yes, that is the signal I'm looking at. Or if that magnitude is below certain limit, that is the noise that I'm looking at. And what I would do is, now please understand, here is exactly what I did. I had data. I did the Fourier decomposition of a noisy data. I got the basis vectors and I got the weighting matrix, right? Now I have set a threshold. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make the entries in this R matrix which are below that threshold. And if I do that and perform that reconstruction again, can you see my noise will be gone? I will repeat this once again. And this is exactly what they do when you sharpen the images. If you have a blur image, remember your app, you click from a button in app, the image gets sharpened. What does it do? It basically takes that image, it finds the orthonormal basis, it adjusts the threshold, and then makes the coefficient below the threshold is equal to 0. And then if you want to make it sharp, you basically add or you actually increase the scaling. So what happens is, the dominant features or the dominant part of the images, they sort of highlight. And you'll see in just a second. So let's run the next section. So this is the application of FFT for denoising. So I'm going to run this section. So I want to see, you will see this big image. It has multiple parts. And I will show you what these parts are. So black on top is the actual clean signal. And then now I want you to see that I made that signal super duper noisy. Can you see that the red signal is the noisy signal? So what I want you to see is the clean signal is black. That was the original signal. And now I have corrupted that signal with noise. And now can you see that initially the signal was small, but once I added the noise, the magnitude has gone all the way to 10, -10, and so on. Can you see? Now what I did in the next step is I took the Fourier transform. And after taking the Fourier transform, I set certain threshold. And then after that threshold, then I made all those coefficients is equal to 0. And after doing that, what I did, that I zeroed all the coefficients. So I tried to reconstruct the signal with this newly zeroed matrix. Once I zero the matrix, the basis vectors that correspond to the noise, they are gone. Their contribution is gone. And what I'm left with pure signal. So now you may not be able to see this, but I want you to zoom in on the second image. So zoom in on here. And you will see there's an underlying black and there is blue. So black is the original signal and blue is the denoise signal. Everyone understood this? So FFT can be an excellent tool for noise reduction. Some of you may ask me, where do I see this? Believe it or not, when you are talking on a cell phone, this FFT is going on in the background. Because as you talk on the cell phone, the microphone is going to pick up your talk, your conversation, and also the background noise. So if you were to look at the purely raw recorded signal, that signal is going to be super noisy. And essentially that noise is corrupting the data. So before that data, the audio signal gets passed to the cell phone tower, they run FFT to clean the audio so that the only conversation part can be transmitted. There comes another problem. When that data chunk is transmitted, there could be some atmospheric delays. There could be some, the data may get corrupted, or bits get missed, and you will have some sort of transmission noise when it is received at the receiver end. Again, there you run FFT to clear out the noise, and that produces the crisp signal. That's why, even though that's why you see AirPods, they have noise, basically excellent noise isolation capability. So basically, you can talk, even you have some sort of noises going on around you. That is what is going on. So FFT is the workhorse in audio communication, and what we did here is done all the time. Yes.
I was just curious about just, since we're doing noise filtering here in this case, like, would it be possible to clean out the noise to the point where we actually destroy the previous data about the original
Yes.
signal?
So there is an entire, okay, there is an entire branch of engineering on error correcting codes. So basically, what you do is, think about it. At CPU level, it's running at gigahertz, petahertz. When you have zeros and ones getting transmitted at that frequency, almost always you're going to have some sort of corrupted data. So even though you get corrupted data, how do you recover the original data? Now, next thing I want to tell you about this, and actually I have seen this. I don't know, but have you seen that sometimes, or at least you have seen in the movie, in movies, basically you point a laser pointer on the window, a glass window, and you try to reconstruct the conversation that is going on inside the room. Something like that is possible, wherein what you do is basically you have some sort of a Doppler, wherein the Doppler signal would capture the frequencies, and then you would perform the Fourier analysis. But then in that particular case, instead of magnifying the signal, you magnify the noise, and that actually gives you some indication of what conversation is going on. At one time, basically you can, I don't know if you have seen this. If you have your iPhones, you can, the newer facial recognition programs, what they can do is they look at your picture, or basically you front face the camera, click on the app, and it will tell you your heart rate. That also works on this principle. What that camera would do, camera along with the depth sensor, it will try to capture the teeny tiny facial movements that occur because of your blood getting pumped in and out. And then basically you do the exact same thing. You do the Fourier analysis, and then you focus on the frequencies of interest. So for an example, for a human heart rate, usually goes between 60 to maybe 150. So what you do is you find the basis, and at the end you cancel out you set the threshold, and then you amplify the band of interest, and you do a peak detection, and that is how you can get the heart rate from your facial features. And that actually app works. So if you go to an Android app or Google Store or App Store, you can actually see that app. Can we choose the frequency I want in this filter case? Yes. So what you can do is you can actually set the cutoff frequency. That is what I said in the case of threshold. And I will actually show you here in just a second. So if you look at the last plot, therein what you will notice,
I want you to zoom in, and it will show you the something called as the power spectral density of the signal and power spectral density of the noise. So basically, you can set up the threshold so that you can retain, you can actually retain certain frequencies in that signal and discard certain frequencies from that signal. So, and this code is very, very important because we are going to do the exact same thing on the images and a higher order data. So if you look at the first case in line number 290, we constructed that super duper noisy signal. Then we constructed the fast Fourier transform. And please understand, we do not use discrete Fourier transform because discrete Fourier transform cannot be computed in real time. So what we do is we use something called as fast Fourier transform. And what I want you to do is look at from line 299, where what I have is I have found out the relative power of the signal, and then I have set the threshold. So if you see here, so I have actually set the threshold and then reconstructed the signal. So that exactly has happened. Okay. Time for an aha moment, okay? Laplace transform. Do you know what Laplace transform is? Can someone tell me what is Laplace transform?
It's converting from x to t to s.
Okay, so let me give you a very basic interpretation of before. So actually, that's a good answer, and I know because you're taking system optimization and control. Okay, so how many of you know logarithms? High school math, right? Logarithm. So why did we need logarithms? So here was the fundamental problem that people were trying to solve. You have a huge number. So think about like 100,000, 300,000, 400,000, 7, 3, 4, 5, big chunk of numbers. You have another big chunk of number, and you need to multiply those two big chunks of numbers. You agree with me that multiplication is going to give you a very big number. You agree? But it will take a lot of time. And imagine long time ago, we did not have MATLAB or calculators or computers. So here is what logarithm did. Logarithm took this big number and converted it into a very small number. Logarithm took this big number, converted to a small number, and this multiplication got converted to addition. So what we did, we added this small number, which was possible, right? And then we found out inverse log, which was this big number. Boom, life became simple. Everyone understood this? That's what Laplace transform does. So what does Laplace transform do? Imagine you have a differential equation which is changing in time. So differential equation, if you want to find the solution, you need to do integration. Do you agree with me? Okay. So when you apply Laplace transform to this differential equation, it becomes an algebraic equation. A plus B is equal to C. Exact same thing what logarithms did to multiplication, Laplace transform does to differentiation. So you have a differential equation, Laplace transform will convert that into an algebraic equation which can add and subtract and then find inverse log, and boom, here you have solution. No differentiation required or no integration required. Everyone understood this? Okay, now here comes the aha moment. Laplace transform is nothing but a Fourier transform. Because here is what happens in Laplace transform. If you have, what is the Laplace transform of x dot? Laplace transform of x dot. If you have Laplace, so if you have Laplace time variable t, that becomes Laplace variable x. If you have a small x,
that becomes capital X. If you have a small x dot, that becomes S capital X. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? So after taking Laplace transform, you get Sx. What happens? This is very, very important. What happens? What happens if you take Fourier transform? What happens if you take the Fourier transform of x dot? If you take Fourier transform of x dot, you get omega x. So the Fourier transform, the Laplace transform, is nothing but a Fourier transform. The only thing is you need to adjust the domain of the Fourier transform so that it becomes a Laplace transform. So if someone asks you what is Laplace transform, you say if you shift the domain of the Fourier transform, you get Laplace transform. Yes.
So does that mean that the Fourier transform only have a specific discrete plane?
Fourier transform is valid from -infinity to +infinity. Laplace transform is valid from 0 to infinity. So to get rid of -infinity to 0, you need to multiply by some sort of annihilating function. And then basically you can derive Laplace transform from Fourier transform. And we will derive that not now, later. So to convince you further, here is a non-standard application of Fourier transform, wherein what I'm doing is I'm finding derivative using Fourier transform. Did anyone say that you can? Do you know that you can find derivatives using Fourier transform? No, right? I didn't know. But that is how it is actually done in lots and lots of computer applications. So you can either use a finite difference. So this code and the derivative that is found out using Fourier transform is called as the spectral derivative. So now what I want to show here is you can go through the code, but what I'm trying to tell you here is you have the true derivative, which is actually found out using df by dx. Then I have found out the derivative using finite difference, and the finite difference means the next value minus previous value divided by the time step. So basically, it's nothing but the slope of that function. So I'm finding out the instantaneous slopes, and that is actually giving me the finite difference. And then I'm finding out the spectral derivative, which is the bottom here. And that is actually nothing but the computed using, can you see that I have used the function FFT? So I'm using FFT to find the spectral derivative. And some of you may ask me, in this particular case, the finite difference looks good with an FFT or spectral derivative. But you will realize that in many, many complicated problems, when the functions are not well behaved, finite difference does not converge. It will not give you a correct derivative. But the spectral derivative will give you an accurate derivative. And that is needed when you are trying to perform the gradient descent or backprop or all types of machine learning algorithms. So you will see that the spectral derivative will be very, very useful when we study the machine learning applications. So and before I had 2 minutes, and I want to tell you this super important thing. How many of you know uncertainty principle. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. How many of you know Redcar uncertainty principle? So I'll tell you what is Redcar uncertainty principle. So at one time, you know where Redcar is, or you know what Redcar is doing, but you don't know both the things at the same time. So which means I could be in the class, but you don't know if I'm teaching or I'm working on something. Or I could be in the lab, but you don't know if I'm sleeping or working on a project. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle talks about a momentum and position. So there are two wave functions. One is momentum wave function and the position wave function. So you can either find out the position accurately or you can find out the momentum accurately, but you cannot find out both. You agree with me? Now let me ask you this. Can someone tell me why? It's a very simple answer to this. And the answer goes something like this. And I will just explain this in just a second, and then I will stop here. So the problem here is, imagine you have a time trace, and imagine you take the frequency content. So basically you have time and you take Fourier transform and you get frequencies. So what has happened? If you look at this time trace, the resolution in time is super duper fine. Do you agree with me? So you know at every time what is the value, right? That means a super fine resolution. If you look at the frequency domain, the resolution in frequency is super fine. Time resolution is fine. Frequency resolution is fine. Do you agree with me? But you cannot find a super fine time and frequency domain resolution at the same time. In other words, it's possible to resolve the signal very accurately in time, or it is possible to resolve the signal very accurately in frequency, but it is not possible to resolve the signal very accurately in time and frequency, which means I do not know what time this frequency occurred. So I know this is the frequency, this is the frequency, this is the frequency, this is the frequency, but I don't know what time the frequency occurred. I don't know what time this frequency occurred. I don't know what time this frequency occurred, or I don't know what time the frequency occurred. Or looking at this signal, I can't just say, hey, this is the frequency, or these are the frequencies in this signal. Do you agree with me? And why is that? Because both of those are Fourier transform of each other. Those are Fourier transform pairs. In other words, the momentum wave function in quantum physics and the position wave function in quantum physics, they are the Fourier transforms of each other. That's why you cannot resolve both of them simultaneously. You can either resolve one or you can resolve other, but you cannot resolve both of them simultaneously. Okay, with that, I will stop here. Okay, so 7:30, I'm going to have a review lesson for robotics 1. You are welcome to log in and watch the video. Yeah, because in today's robotics class, I had invited guest lecturers and they took almost entire duration of class. So
You had some issue with the class?
Huh?
You had an issue with the class?
No. So basically, I invited some guest lecturers, but they took the entire class period.
Oh, that's cool. Was that for 4:55?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I don't remember that happening. I was during COVID though, so it might be a little more difficult.